Welcome to another episode of Code Breakers, the podcast that empowers you to overcome life's challenges and tap into your full potential. I'm Sam, your host. Last week, we talked about common obstacles people face when attempting to initiate lifestyle changes or set new goals. Unrealistic expectations, setting too many goals at the same time, or a lack of clarity and intrinsic motivation, struggling with consistency, feeling discouraged by setbacks, or just finding it difficult to overcome problems. Ultimately, all these things hinder or halt progress on your journey altogether. But I fundamentally believe change, although hard, yes, requires effort, consistency, and discipline. Yes, absolutely. Although change is hard, it doesn't have to be painfully difficult and can actually be an enjoyable process you look forward to and embrace when approached with reflection, when it's aligned to your values, and when you establish some clear, manageable goals. By incorporating mindfulness, setting realistic boundaries, and celebrating small victories along the way, you can empower your mindset, overcome limiting beliefs, and make the entire change process more enjoyable, more sustainable, and more achievable. So, today we're exploring the journey of navigating change in life and leadership, and digging deep into the roots of resistance to change to help you identify some life changing habits you can start implementing in your life right away. Hey, real life moment, just real quick before we jump into today's episode. As a transformation coach, I'm constantly helping other people work through self limiting beliefs and thought patterns that hold them back from achieving their dreams and their greatness. I really want you to know that if you caught the YouTube video of last week's episode, you may or may not have noticed this, but the quality was abysmal, in my opinion. And I can say that publicly because I'm currently self-producing, but I had a limited window to record that episode. I was already on take 2 or 3, and I ended up basically having to decide if I was going to postpone the episode after a 2-week break or roll with what I had. I was upset, frustrated with the timing, frustrated with myself for poor planning and execution, frustrated with the lack of quality. And honestly, at one point, probably not that long ago, I would have made an excuse not to post it. It's not my best work, video editing. I know that. But I just wanted to share this in case someone is listening that is waiting for perfection before they start, or letting the fear of failure hold you back from doing that thing that you just can't stop thinking about. Start where you are with what you have, and if or when you trip up along the way, just roll with it as best you can and make the adjustments that you need for the next time. All right, change. The only constant in life. Like weather, change can be unpredictable, sometimes stormy, but the good news is that it's always in motion. So know that if you're going through a stormy or a rainy season, it doesn't last forever. I like to think that if we don't listen to life's guidance, God's guidance, whatever resonates with you, then life, God, source, it will force us to change. And when this happens, people say things like, life threw me a curveball, or I'm being tested. And you're being presented with an opportunity to grow and evolve. But I also think this is exactly why understanding and operating from our values is so important. If you caught the last episode, you know that our values are the guiding principles that shape our identity and influence our decisions. They also direct us toward a life that resonates with our true self, our highest self, or our whole self, if you're familiar with the concept of living undivided by Parker Palmer. When we set goals that align with our values, we tap into a deep well of intrinsic motivation. Life becomes less about the materialistic results Yeah, maybe it's a nice bonus for sure, but it's not the sole purpose and motivation for your goal anymore. And when this occurs, you begin to appreciate the journey and the process, who you become along the way more than the end result. As you go through life, you're going to be presented with choices that generally provide one of two options: the option to either live in accordance with your values, or indifferent to, or even worse, in opposition to your values. When we choose to live in alignment with our values, we are consciously choosing to live in alignment with our highest self. And we start to create and attract the life that corresponds with that version of us. You begin to notice synchronicities. Life feels like it's flowing with ease. You're more energized. You start to attract experiences, opportunities, and people that are meant to help elevate you on this path almost effortlessly. It sounds pretty great, right? And it is, but it does take some work. You have to regulate your nervous system, work through limiting beliefs, and express and maintain strong, healthy boundaries. And when you go from unclear and unsure, lacking confidence in who you are, what's important to you, and how much you care about those things, to somebody that has clarity, people will be quick to say that you have changed. And you absolutely have. And that's all right. That was the point, right? Just know that this change may be difficult for other people to understand, especially if they benefit from who you previously were and how you previously showed up in the world. This means they're going to, intentionally or not, it doesn't really matter. You're not trying to control them or their response. You're mentally preparing yourself for how you will handle yours. But they are probably going to push back a little bit. This is now a change that is affecting them too, and they may not have expected it. Actually, there's a really beautiful quote by Viktor Frankl: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. Frankl was a Holocaust survivor, a psychiatrist, and the founder of logotherapy, or a version of therapy that focuses on meaning creation, which makes a lot of sense, as the quote I just shared is from his book titled Man's Search for Meaning. It's a fascinating book about his experience in concentration camps during World War II and how he found meaning in it all. I shared this quote: between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and freedom. Because when you start setting and maintaining new boundaries, you and the people around you are going to have a response to that. And you, as the individual trying to consciously improve, should be aware of that and even attempt to anticipate how people may respond, so you can be prepared to reinforce and assert your boundaries in a healthy, mature way. Otherwise, you'll default to whatever your current baseline is, which for a lot of us women, a lot of times that's betraying yourself to prioritize someone else's comfort and happiness, right? That's often what people pleasing is. So, this begs the question, why are people resistant to change? It's usually not the change itself, but a fear of the unknown and a lack of unfamiliarity with what this new situation means for them. And that causes resistance. So, understanding the root of the resistance is usually the first step in effectively overcoming it. People may resist change simply because they are comfortable with the way that things are, even if the current situation is not ideal. It is something that they know, and any sort of change is going to disrupt that comfort. People are creatures of habit, and any change that disrupts our established routines, our norms, our expectations might be met with some sort of natural resistance. This is normal. Past experiences with change that led to negative outcomes can also create a reluctance to embrace new changes. People may fear a repeat, or change makes them feel like they're losing control over their circumstances. And this loss of, or this perceived loss of autonomy can be unsettling, which again leads to more resistance. And then, of course, changes that conflict with somebody's values or the overall culture of an organization may also be met with resistance, simply because people often resist changes that seem to go against their core beliefs. Now, that is probably a whole other topic that we're not going to get into today. While these are all very applicable to personal change resistance, things like a lack of understanding, concerns about competence, perceived negative personal consequences, or a lack of trust are also common organizational or collective factors leading to hesitation or resistance. In these cases, if the reasons behind the change are not communicated effectively, people may not buy in because they don't understand how the change will or won't impact them, or they don't understand their role in the implementation and the secondary and tertiary impacts that are expected on the other side. Clear and transparent communication, as well as providing space for acknowledging, heeding, and or explaining the thought process behind not taking the advice of critical folks on the ground who live and work in the process or environment regularly, is crucial to overcoming this barrier. Fear is another big reason. People may resist change because they feel that they lack the necessary skills or knowledge to adapt successfully. And because of this, they're afraid that if they can't navigate the change successfully or cope with the new demands, that they're at risk of some sort of reprimand or, worst case scenario, losing their job. If there is any sense of perceived negative impact on someone personally, whether it's job insecurity or increased workload, they're going to be naturally resistant out of sheer survival, just to protect their well being. And last but not least, trust in the leadership and the change process is vital. If people do not trust those implementing the change or don't believe that the change is in their best interest, resistance is pretty likely. So maybe I'll have to do an episode just on change leadership one of these days. But in the meantime, let's talk about some great tips that will help you personally and professionally. Most people, when on the receiving end of new boundaries from a friend or partner or spouse, are going to be shocked or in disbelief. So it won't really sink in. You can see this in something called the Kubler-Ross model or the 5 stages of grief, which kind of outlines the emotional journey people go through when facing significant loss or going through a significant change: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. This model is particularly helpful when navigating the death of a close friend or family member, or even the loss of a friendship or relationship. But I would say that this is most applicable to unexpected changes or when you're trying to figure out exactly where someone is on the change response continuum. So you may observe this cycle when attempting to set new boundaries with loved ones as well. Alternatively, when making intentional choices to improve your life, you may go through what's called the trans theoretical model: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance or relapse. This is where you experience some catalyst for change, decide on a path forward, prepare mentally, physically, buy new equipment, buy the gym membership, go a few times, and then either stick with it or have to repeat the cycle. Interestingly, in this one, the pre contemplation phase captures a critical element of the change cycle that isn't talked about very often. And that is the phase before change is even initiated, the not knowing what you don't know phase. And in this phase, people usually aren't even aware of the need for change. And if they are, they're resistant to it, refusing to even really think about it or give it any sort of weight, which I find interesting because it kind of goes back to the idea of asking close, trusted friends for feedback and insight on how you show up versus how you want to show up, your espoused values versus your lived values, and the concept of divinely imposed change. How many times in your life have you been thrown into a problem you had to figure out how to navigate or you'd fail? In each of those moments, change was thrust upon you. And in each of these frameworks, I noticed that there is an initial hesitation to accept, let alone embrace change or the need for change. And I think this occurs for many reasons. But in addition to the reasons I mentioned earlier, quite simply, no shame about it, our brains just prefer familiar, comfortable, and predictable. This provides safety and security, whereas uncertainty and getting outside of your comfort zone tends to trigger fear and anxiety. So, in order to want to get out of this zone, you have to want the things on the other side of that discomfort pretty damn bad. Now, I'm going to share these details just to provide a baseline. Honestly, I might cut it out, just so you know where I started versus where I'm at. It's super uncomfortable to me, but I feel like there are people out there who need to hear this part to trust what I'm saying. I grew up below the poverty line in rural America with a mother who struggled with meth addiction. I had my daughter at 20 without a job or college degree. I ended up stuck in an abusive relationship and had to navigate a brief period of homelessness in order to get myself and my daughter out. And I joke sometimes that my superpower is creating order from chaos, but the reality is that I've been a personal change manager and my own transformation coach for the entirety of my life. I just happened to create a career out of it too. In less than 10 years, I went from brokenhearted and homeless, living paycheck to paying off almost $80,000 in student loan debt, paying cash for my graduate degree, cash for a certificate from Brown. I have an incredibly supportive husband. I travel all the time. I've bought and lived in million-dollar homes. I know how to create lemonade from lemons, gold from dust, something from nothing. And using the advice I share on this podcast from therapy, positive psychology, leadership, neuroscience, all of it will help you do the same. Just please remember that every single one of us is unique. We all have our own unique paths to walk, our own lessons to learn, and we will require and respond to change in unique ways. Ultimately, it's up to you to figure out what's important to you, what your values and goals and priorities are, and then try some shit until you figure out what works. Try implementing one or two practices you've learned from me just for a week and then maybe a month, and let me know how it goes. My whole point is that if I can do it, so can you. There's nothing special about me. In fact, I've had circumstances and people working against me most of my life. This is why and how I know it all works. You just have to want the future you're envisioning more than you want the comfort of your present. Vision plus commitment and discipline and perseverance equals transformation every single time. Simple. Here are some tips I hope will help you successfully navigate the next major change you go through. Whether chosen or thrust upon you, this should help you through it. If it does, I'd love for you to leave feedback or a review and let me know what you found most helpful. All right, y'all know I love neuroscience, especially when it comes to navigating change and understanding how our brains adapt and change over time. Making incremental gains, no matter how small, is the key to sustainable transformation. I really want to stress this. Slow and steady wins the race. I didn't wake up one day living the life that I live today. I held a very clear picture in my mind's eye and worked intently on bringing that vision to life. Yes, quantum jumping is real, and you absolutely can bring rapid changes into your life, but build the foundation first. What is your vision? Who does that require you to become? Small, consistent changes, incremental gains can and do lead to significant transformations. When we intentionally expose ourselves to new challenges or experiences that are just far enough outside of our comfort zone to challenge us, but not too difficult for us to handle, Yerkes Dodson, right? Our brains respond by forming new connections, enhancing our cognitive flexibility, and we get better at handling change. Think of it like a mental workout. If you follow me on social media, you know that I love to talk about mental fitness. This is why. Just like consistent physical exercise strengthens and tones our muscles, consistent exposure to new thoughts, behaviors, and experiences strengthens and adapts our neural pathways. When you're trying to change, yes, it takes effort in the beginning, but once you do it for a while, it becomes second nature. It becomes your new baseline. And this is why those small, consistent changes on a daily basis lead to significant transformations over time. If you're interested in learning more about the science behind this, I encourage you to check out episode 12, where I share more tips on how we can leverage neuroplasticity, the ability to rewire our brains and build new neural pathways to embrace change more readily and implement it effectively and sustainably. How often do you make a mistake and dwell on that mistake? How often do you stumble or fall and use it as justification to quit? If that's familiar to you, I want you to hear this loud and clear. Implementing change and undergoing a personal transformation is not about pursuing perfection. It's about maintaining clarity on the long-term goal, what's truly important, and adapting along the way. Positive psychology is a game changer in this regard. Positive psychology teaches us to focus on strengths, resilience, and growth rather than having an intense focus on failures, problems, and perceived weaknesses. When paired with a growth mindset, it becomes much easier to perceive setbacks for what they really are: opportunities for growth, development, and expansion, and points of clarification. At its core, it encourages us to shift our perspective from what's wrong to what's going well and what is working. Now, because I'm cognizant of toxic positivity, bypassing, things like that, I think it's important to note here that when you're going through challenging moments and overcome with self-doubt or negative thought patterns, first of all, if it's excessive, daily, or controlling your life and making it impossible to function, please seek professional medical support. Sometimes there's a fine line between obsessive, unhealthy rumination and healthy reflection. So, absolutely no shame in doing what you need to, whether it's medication therapy, do what you need to operate from a place of balance and clarity. Then, from a healthy space, give yourself some time and space to feel and process whatever emotions or feelings are coming up: fear, anxiety, self-doubt, negative thoughts, frustration, and any other emotions that may arise. It's essential to approach these emotions with like a sense of curiosity and definitely some self-compassion. Acknowledge that it's okay and normal to feel doubt and vulnerability during times of change and transition. Then take a moment to identify the root of these emotions, explore their underlying causes, and consider how they may be connected to past experiences or your limiting beliefs. By giving yourself the grace to fully experience and understand and explore these emotions, you're practicing and strengthening your own level of self-awareness and increasing your potential for transformative growth. Acknowledging your emotions is a crucial step towards building resilience and embracing change with a more grounded and empowered mindset. When I say feel and process, I mean truly acknowledge and sit with your feelings and emotions, rather than trying to numb or ignore them through distractions or substances. If you can, journal through the process. You might be surprised at the lies that come up from your subconscious mind to your conscious mind. Those are the negative beliefs that you keep hearing. You're not good enough, you don't deserve it, you could never do that. But bullshit. Yes, you are, yes, you do, and yes, you can. And when you give yourself the time and the space to sit with these thoughts, like feelings and beliefs, you're taking their power away. Once you become conscious of a subconscious belief, guess what? It's no longer subconscious. You're now fully aware of that belief, and you can begin recognizing when it comes up, how it's affecting your decisions, your actions, and then best of all, consciously make a different choice. I guess I'm full of self promotions today because I do have a great episode on this as well. Episode 5 on feeling your feelings. I'd encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. Okay, transformational leadership. This is a fascinating leadership theory I learned about in grad school that actually intrigued me most for the role that it plays in personal development. If you haven't caught on yet, I'm a personal development junkie. And within transformational leadership is a concept called personal transcendence. It is this idea of stepping beyond the self, transcending our limitations, and embracing a higher purpose. Undergoing personal transcendence involves an intense shift in your perspective, your self awareness, and your level of consciousness. This journey often involves connecting with something greater than ourselves, such as a higher purpose, universal consciousness, or a spiritual dimension, resulting in a heightened sense of awareness, inner peace, and a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. When people experience something like this, it often leads to a shift in their values, priorities, and a more holistic view of life. On a personal level, leaders who embrace transformational leadership undergo this experience of personal transcendence, and through that process end up becoming catalysts for positive change. They lead with more integrity, authenticity, and heart. And just like on the personal level, when we operate with a clear vision, when leaders inspire and motivate their teams around a vision, around a shared vision, they turn challenges into exciting opportunities and create an environment where personal growth and development is deeply intertwined to the broader organizational mission. Now, what's also really cool about this is that once someone goes through a personal evolution like this, it's nearly impossible for their leadership style and their general approach to life not to change. It is a life-altering experience, an awakening, if you will, when leaders undergo this evolution and they adopt a transformational leadership style. Their approach to professional and personal matters also evolves. So my hope then is that as more and more leaders or aspiring leaders learn about and consider embracing this style as a personal leadership philosophy, go through their own deep personal evolution, and then begin leading with more integrity, more authenticity, and more heart, they will inspire more people within the organization and beyond to embark on their own journey of personal transcendence, their own personal awakening and growth. The result of this would be a collective elevation of consciousness, where transformative leadership becomes a driving force for positive change, innovation, and the cultivation of thriving, empowered communities. I would love to see this transformative approach become not just a leadership philosophy, but a shared ethos, something that can transcend labels and differences used to divide and conquer, and use it instead to create a world where personal transcendence, finding your way back to wholeness, is embraced. Leadership is heart-centered, and everyone has the opportunity to experience their own awakening and live a full, meaningful, happy life. Lastly, this whole episode is about change. The idea that yes, change is hard, but it doesn't have to be. And I don't consider myself religious one bit, but I absolutely believe in a higher power, a higher consciousness. Therefore, I honestly could not, in good conscience, discuss what gets me through difficult moments in my personal journey without discussing my faith. I'm not going to push a specific credence on you, but I will say this. Having faith in a higher power, something outside of yourself, God, source, universal consciousness, to me, it's one and the same. But whatever you believe in, cultivate that, foster that, lean on that. And when nothing else makes sense, go to that. Hand your problems over to God for a moment, set it down, rest, refuel, reset, and ask for the strength to carry on. I've never been let down. I've seen a lot of dark days, but I have never been left there, and you won't be either. This may be honestly one of the most foundational pillars of my recovery journey. I've shared before that I grew up around Christianity, but Buddhism, yoga, meditation, science, and some new age stuff have all become critical components of my faith and my personal transformation journey. Identifying and having faith in something outside of ourselves inspires a sense of purpose and meaning, offering light in the midst of other uncertainties. It can provide reassurance and a broader perspective beyond the immediate challenges that we might be experiencing. Faith helps us cultivate resilience by teaching that obstacles are temporary and surmountable. So this gives us encouragement and a positive outlook, allowing us then to approach challenges with much more optimism, trust in the process, and a firm belief that our personal growth aligns with a higher purpose. So I would just highly encourage you to identify and nurture what resounds most with you. We've talked about so much today. Navigating change in life and leadership, the roots of resistance to change, positive psychology, mindfulness, neuroscience, and transformational leadership. Hopefully, you've identified a couple of practices you can try out for yourself. Remember, change is not the enemy. It's actually an exciting catalyst for growth, especially when approached with intention. Before we go, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review if you've enjoyed this podcast or have found it beneficial in any way. Until next time, remember, you have the power to break your own code and rewrite your story. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you next time.